Welcome, everyone. This is episode 23 of They Might Be Self-Aware. I am Hunter Powers, joined as always by...
Daniel Bishop.
Hello, Daniel Bishop.
Hello, Hunter Powers. You know what? I'm feeling hungry today.
Ooh.
And that's good, because we're going to talk about edible AI with VelvetTaco's ChatGPTaco.
That does sound tasty. I'm also looking forward to some European Union talk because they are currently outlawing stealing faces and learning your romantic interests all from the AI.
Stateside, the Senate wants to outlaw AI copies. What does that mean?
Well, right back to the EU, Apple is being labeled as anti-competitive as it holds back certain features due to all these new regulations.
Speaking of the law, can you break the law just by building an AI model? We might need to talk to a lawyer.
And finally, we will examine the AI money pit that we are very actively digging and ask ourselves whether or not it is worth the continued investment and where exactly this hole to somewhere might or may not be leading. It's all up next because you are listening to
They Might Be Self-Aware.
Hunter.
Yes, Daniel.
I'm hungry. You know what I'm hungry for?
Let's taco about it.
It's tacos, as a matter of fact. And that's a pretty good and frankly easy guess if you know me and you know where I live, which is in Austin, Texas. We've got
a lot of tacos down there.
1,000 places. And nearly all of them are absolutely incredible in totally different ways.
Do you have a favorite?
I have favorites for like specific subtypes of tacos. You have your hyper-specific regional Mexican cuisine.
What are the subtypes of tacos?
Yeah, so different parts of Mexico, or you want to get something. There's a whole food truck full of like Honduras and El Salvadorian trucks, and they've got their own specific takes on things. When I moved here from San Francisco, I started really missing burritos because they've got the San Francisco Mission style burrito. Can't really get that down here. But tacos, we're lousy with them in the best possible way. Recently, I went actually twice in 1 week, which is not the most I've ever done to this place. A local chain called VelvetTaco. They're
Sounds
absolutely
like a cupcake
incredible.
place.
They have a red velvet cake that you can get there, but it's not like their big seller. I assume the two are sort of related for the naming, but yeah, I never really thought about that much.
Now, is there an AI subgenre of tacos? Is that a thing?
I think that's becoming a thing. So VelvetTaco, I'll say, specializes in non-traditional aspects of the taco sort of spectrum. You can get like a Cuban pig or a Korean fried rice or a Nashville hot tofu taco. All three of those are to die for. They're so good. Last week, though, they have a weekly taco feature. Their WTF was the ChatGPTaco, GPTaco, which I saw, and immediately my eyes started sparkling, and I said, I must try this. Usually I try the weekly taco anyways, but now I really had to. And Hunter, it was amazing.
And
does
it talk to you while you're eating it?
No, so this isn't like an app. It's not anything, directly from the consumer's perspective to do with ChatGPT.
It's just
rather
it gave the recipe?
Yes, so VelvetTaco's director of culinary, Chef Vanessa Willis, was using ChatGPT to build a presentation for a tasting class, and she ended up feeding into ChatGPT VelvetTaco ingredients to come up with some potential new tacos. And it spit out some tacos, and the next step was to make those things. Now, it wasn't just saying, hey, ChatGPT, make me some tacos. If you look at the set of ingredients, it's all the same kind of stuff that VelvetTaco tends to already use, just interesting combinations.
This is like here's what I have in my refrigerator. Please tell me some recipes.
Exactly.
Sort of thing, except taco focused.
This taco had flank steak and shrimp, red chili aioli, chimichurri, green onion, queso fresco, and crispy potatoes on a corn tortilla for one of the ones that they made. I think that's the one that I had.
And did you hallucinate at all?
No hallucinations from ChatGPT, no hallucinations from me. Bliss for sure, but definitely no hallucinations.
Okay.
And so I think that this
I think
is
it's their Portland location in order to get that.
Yeah,
one.
exactly. But it's a really interesting thing to do with AI. This is one of the use cases that I really appreciate.
You've been saying you're going to do this. You're going to record a cooking segment. Have you done anything and just haven't recorded it, or it's just like something you want to do?
I've asked ChatGPT for certain like weird fusion cuisines. One that I really kind of keyed into was French Jamaican. I hadn't really ever seen that as like a fusion. I said, what if we were to combine these things and put it together for like a cassoulet with, jerk chicken instead, or like a goat?
What is a cassoulet? I don't know.
It's a amazing stewed beans sort of dish. It's one of those you have it going all day and you have some chicken or whatever on top, depending on what region of France that it's from. There are specific cassoulets. Absolutely incredible. You should definitely make a cassoulet sometime. And maybe I will, and maybe I'll have it be powered by ChatGPT. But for VelvetTaco, they have a set of ingredients that they tend to use, and they said, okay, here's all of these, come up with some stuff. And it did. And they gave it a try. They liked that one. They released it to people. Maybe they'll do some other ones, which I think is pretty cool. This is a creative use of AI. We're not taking the human element out of it because humans came up with the specific chimichurri recipe that they're using. They have these kinds of ingredients that this restaurant uses. That's all based on humans and the people who are liking the food coming back and forth. There's a lot of humanity, dare I say, in this food. And then there's humanity in we've been given this taco, this interesting set of a combination of ingredients, and they had multiple to choose from and decided this is the one that we're going to make. So I like this use of AI. It's not replacing anyone's jobs. No one's, no one's out of a job for this. People are getting to try things that they wouldn't necessarily have thought of on their own. I'm 1,000,000% behind this kind of use case for AI. AI deserves a place in the kitchen. Daniel Bishop seal of approval. Ka-chunk.
Taco in the loop.
Yeah, right. Tacos in the loop, humans in the loop. I'm absolutely at one end of that loop, and tacos are being fed right in, just directly in.
It's the reason you got into AI. Make a great taco.
I didn't know it at the time, but it turns out it's all been culminating in this. Tacos.
I like it. I guess the question is, with all the AI regulation going around, will the tacos survive, or is our lovely government and governments around the world going to squash these taco dreams? We can't have AI going around making tacos.
Well, I think as long as we keep people's personally identifiable information out of the tacos and biometric information out of the tacos, it should turn out all right. I've seen a few articles, you've probably seen the same ones, about regulation. Like though governments of the world are finally starting to really catch up, pass legislation, think about passing legislation that's going to hopefully help curb some negative uses of AI. Which one do you want to talk about first? US, Britain, EU, they're all talking about it these days.
Yeah, I guess just the general landscape. So there's, I think, been an open question of, are we going to regulate AI, and what are those regulations going to look like? We've got certain factions calling very strongly for a lot of regulation, and we've got other folks pushing against it. And at this point, it seems like there probably is going to be some legislation, because there are so many different bills that are all in progress and in different parts of the world. Mm-hmm. I guess we're, given our viewpoint, focused more on probably the US and the EU. That's what we interact with the most.
Sure.
Where we see it boiling up. And we can also see some initial reactions happening as some folks like Meta start saying, well, look, you're going to regulate all this stuff. We're not going to give you our products. Okay, fine. No AI for you. And then I guess in this, this stew, we also have an interesting little, aside. I don't know if you're aware of Donald Trump's VP pick, but he has spoken out on AI and a big advocate of open source weights, etc. in the past. And I don't know whether that makes an impact as well, but I don't know. It's all kind of coming together in this stew. What was that? Your French stew called?
A cassoulet, yeah.
Cassoulet. There's a regulation cassoulet happening.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure really how much a politicalization of AI has really happened in terms of like it's a left issue versus a right. I think from most of what I've seen in general, most people are headed in the direction of there should be some regulation. Sam Altman of OpenAI fame was one of the first and biggest voices to say to the government, yes, we should be regulating. We should absolutely be moving toward this. I think we've kind of poo-pooed that in the past ourselves, saying he's just trying to expect that the laws can't keep up with this sort of progress.
And to that, or he shapes them such that his company is
in charge of himself.
Is the savior of everything.
Yep. And I do think there are things like that to worry about. But the EU passed a law which I think most people are going to be able to get behind. People, not necessarily corporations that are trying to hold on to all of this data, but there's an AI Act that was passed, and people are going to have to start working toward compliance of this. I think they have until August 2025 or sometime in early 2026, something like that. You can't use it for biometric categorization to try and identify someone's sexual orientation or their religion. You can't do untargeted scraping of faces from the internet. You can't do untargeted scraping of faces from security camera footage. We talked about the security camera aspect of things, and so this is regulation for exactly that. Hey, you can't just blindly look at security cam footage and start figuring out who's who. There'd have to be like specific law-related reasons of that one person stole something. Now we can look up who that one person is. You can't just do it for everybody. You can't do emotion detection in workplace and schools. You can't do social scoring systems. These are almost certainly going to go over broadly very well. I like all of that. I don't think that we should have biometric sexual orientation detection from AI. Like, that's not going to be used for anything positive. Ever, right? Let's say you're not allowed to do that one. And when I say let's, the EU's already doing it. Good.
Well, the EU has definitely been at the forefront of a lot of data protection laws, the GDPR probably being the most famous. As engineers, it's often a royal pain to have to develop something that is GDPR compliant, which basically, and especially in an AI context, there's all sorts of new little wrinkles so the GDPR basically says that A, there's a lot of data that you can't track, but most importantly, any individual has the right to say, A, I'd like to see all the data that you have on me, and B, I want you to go ahead and erase it all. And as we start building products that are derivatives of that data, very common in the AI space, but in lots of other spaces too, it just becomes increasingly challenging to figure out how do I back all of their data out. And I don't know, I sort of see some of this regulation as an extension of that. It's what started as the GDPR evolving with our times.
I see some sort of reverberances between what GDPR is supposed to be doing and what the EU is accomplishing with this AI Act. And again, I feel like I'm really behind all of these things happening. You're right, from a developer's perspective, it can be kind of a pain to implement these things, but it's presumably to help limit, like there was a gigantic breach of Snowflake's databases. So Snowflake, it's a provider that people
that was the AT&T one.
I think it was a bunch. Like there were multiple companies because it was via Snowflake that things got compromised, and so AT&T, among others, had these absolutely tremendous data breaches, data leakages, stealings, whatever you want to call it. And at this point, I don't think I'm an AT&T customer, but I use like Google Fi, which uses AT&T towers. Maybe they've got me in there somewhere. My data's been stolen like 10 times over. If you're on the internet, that data is going to get stolen. And that's a very frustrating thing. I could change all of my passwords weekly as much as I want, and all of my personally identifiable information, all my PII, is getting leaked once a year from some other sort of breach. So I can see why some places would say, let's make it a little bit easier to not have all of this stuff stored. And then you extrapolate that into the AI world of, I don't want my face being stored attached to my name, or like knowing that I'm straight or gay or this or that, or I belong to this religion, or I am a member of that political party based on the way I dress or whatever. I don't see any good coming of that kind of usage of AI. And when I say AI, I don't necessarily mean like generative AI, which is where a lot of that term gets overloaded these days.
Yeah.
I mean like more traditional ML models, but still.
I don't know. I'm sort of on both sides. I mean, so it's like okay, personally, there's a box I can check. Do I want the AI to be scanning me and figuring out every single detail about my life and predicting every single little tidbit to feed into their other algorithm to figure out what to market to me and whether or not they should be looking into me even more, et cetera, et cetera. No, I don't check the box. But at the same time, the idea of outlawing the technology, like we have the technology. It works. It's just a program that you can run. Some ones and some zeros that we can run that will do these things. No. These ones and zeros are illegal. You cannot run these ones and zeros. There's like, just pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. There's that element to it that we're pretending that this technology doesn't exist. We are pretending that it isn't being run.
And we're not pretending it doesn't exist and that's not being run, because otherwise you wouldn't need a law for it. We're saying this kind of thing exists and this will put you in jail for running it. The same sort of thing for piracy software. The RIAA was going after pirates really hard back in the mid 2000s. Maybe we're going to see some companies or government agencies really going after people who are doing deep fakes. But how do you know that you're doing deep fakes versus other like generative uses? Some of this stuff is going to be hard to impossible to legislate. But then you also see, at so-and-so high school, there were illicit pictures of some teen being posted around that weren't real. Like, it's not as impossible to find these, use cases as you might think. Sometimes people are pretty blatant about it.
So, in theory, I can't train a model to predict your political affiliation from you said your outfit. I'm just taking photographs of outfits.
I think there's nothing that would stop people from being able to make them. It's that you're not allowed to, but you're also not allowed to build siege weaponry or, whatever. Like there's plenty of physical objects that I could build that I'm not allowed to have or do or use. You're not supposed to be building pipe bombs probably, but you can load up a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook or maybe try and hack, a prompt into ChatGPT to get it to tell you. And then you've got an illegal thing in your basement or whatever. It still is illegal, even if you never did anything with it, even if you never brought it out into the light of day and no one else ever knew. It's still illegal to have done that. So I think while that's less of a concern than someone using a pipe bomb to commit an act of terror, the same sort of thing. Like if you're using some completely local program to be making smut of a particularly illegal variety, and there's a few varieties, that's harder to track, harder to litigate, harder to whatever than it is, oh, I put this on the internet, or oh, I'm sharing pictures of this with my classmates, or oh, that kind of thing. But isn't that the case of any illegal act?
Yeah, I guess the question is where does it cross the line, and how do we define those lines, and how do we avoid them being silly? I was just thinking of another example. We've seen examples of people leveraging OpenAI's models to exploit zero-day exploits to show that there could easily be a future where an AI agent is reading the security bulletins and, oh, there's this new zero-day exploit available. It takes advantage of that exploit to scan the internet and hack into systems. Seems very plausible that will be a thing that exists because it already exists to some degree.
Yeah, so hackers are already reading those reports and building new worms and Trojans.
Right, but the idea here is that it's entirely autonomous agent that almost like a worm expands on itself and gets more resources and keeps building and learning. But should building something like that be illegal? The act of doing the research into an AI agent that could theoretically do harm. Does that need to be, well, I guess one, regulated, and then regulated to the point where, like, yeah, I'm gonna throw you in jail because.
Yeah. There are, I don't know if this passed in the US, but there was mention of so many gigaflops or teraflops or some sort of flops of training data was like a maximum that you were allowed to use to train a model that could be used locally, with the idea being above a certain level, it's smart enough that it could do more harmful things. Now, of course, if it's never been exposed to any training data that it could infer how to do those bad things, that's sort of a moot point. And then you start thinking of how could we remove certain data from the training of these models, etc. A very hairy issue. I don't know where my stance is, because I would want my stance to be with established legal precedent. I'm putting on my Supreme Court powdered wig. They all wear powdered wigs, right? I'm pretty sure they do. Yeah. So I'm putting on my powdered wig here to say, whatever the legal precedent is for physical objects or for other existing software equivalents, that's what we should do. So if you're going to have, let's use the anarchist cookbook sort of example. If it is illegal to have the anarchist cookbook, then...
And it is not.
Good. Okay. So that's good. If it was illegal to have that, then presumably it's illegal to have something that could generate it. Or I don't think it's illegal for someone to tell you how to build a pipe bomb. I'm going to keep using that example, and we're going to get flagged on some government registry. But here we are. I'm already on it.
You love being on those lists.
I know. I love it. I love it. So good. You're allowed to be told how to do something. I don't know if it is illegal to build a working pipe bomb in your garage and not do anything with it. If it is illegal to do that, then I think it's probably illegal to have something that could make exploitive material via like a stable diffusion or something like that. If you're able to make deep fakes, if the act of making a deep fake is different from the ability to make a deep fake legally, I think that's where you have to draw that line. And I don't know what the established precedent is, but whatever's consistent, I guess, is what I'd go for. Still, the end result of someone is making fake exploitive, however you say that word, material. I don't like the idea of people doing that in general. And I just don't know quite where you draw the line, because I'm not a legal expert.
Do you think we get to the point where jailbreaking an AI model is a crime?
No, I don't think so, because you'd have to have completely regulated all open source models at that point as well. You wouldn't be able to load a LoRa on top of a model. You wouldn't be able to do this. You wouldn't be able to do that. Any kind of adapting, any kind of fine tuning of a model, etc., would have to be illegal for what you said to be able to pass.
I guess it's theoretically possible that we could have certain safety regulations around AI models. Here's this sort of list of things that you're not allowed to do, that you need to program in or implement a safety layer on top of any model that gets released, or it cannot be distributed across the internet. And any attempt to bypass these safeguards could be seen as a crime. Now, it could today be a violation of a terms of service. So, I don't know, OpenAI could certainly kill your account if it finds that you are jailbreaking. And I guess someone doesn't know, jailbreaking is the act of getting around their safeguards to not, usually it's answer certain questions or provide certain content, like building those things that Daniel was talking about, which I'm not going to mention.
Oh, so I'm the only one who's going to say pipe bomb on the podcast? I'm going to stay off the list,
yes. You can say it all you want. I never said it.
Okay.
You hear that, AIs? I never said it.
Yeah, I think this kind of gets into like the free speech sort of realm. And as AI becomes more capable, are we going to have to start worrying about attributing personhood to it? And there's a huge legal can of worms as things get more and more capable. I don't know what the answer is. And it's not going to be one answer. It's a whole bunch of very specific answers is what this is going to turn out to be. But I don't think that there's necessarily, and I could be wrong, by the way, I'm not a legal expert. I don't think there's anything wrong with someone telling me how to do an illegal act. And that would be and I don't think there's anything, I certainly hope there's nothing illegal with having illegal information in your brain. I know an illegal thing. I memorized a Windows CD key to be able to get a copy of XP working without having to pay for it. That would be illegal information, I guess. I don't think it's illegal to know stuff, and I don't think it's legal to necessarily say something to somebody. And so why should it then be illegal for a large language model? Granted, it's not a person, that's why. But I'll make the argument anyways. Why should it be illegal for an open source large language model to know about stuff and be able to tell you it if you asked? We need a lawyer to be our, like, a call-in, not co-host, what do you call it? A guest star. We need a guest star, like, AI lawyer. And I don't mean a lawyer who is an AI. Because we have a lot of these questions. I never know what the answer is.
But the lawyers don't know yet either, right? Everyone's still figuring it out.
They'd at least know a little bit more of the precedent or have certain insights that we don't.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I know I'm not asking Morton.
Yeah, because so the EU's going after Apple right now, saying so Apple has all their Apple Intelligence features, the real AI coming out, AI. And they're not going to be bringing some of those to the EU to begin with.
Yeah, they're threatening to take their toys and go home because they're not allowed to scrape everyone's face off the internet.
Because potentially, they're violating some of these things and taking some data that they're not per the new EU regulations. And the EU's come out and said that, well, this is anti-competitive behavior, not giving us access to the features that we want. You know, we expect you to continue developing these features and developing them in the way that we have so deemed to be acceptable. Simply denying us access to these things is, again, in their words, anti-competitive, which just seems absurd.
Yeah, I think it's an absurd statement from Apple's end. If the EU is saying what you're going to be doing is illegal, you're not allowed to scrape these faces, you're not allowed to, whatever set of privacy invading stuff that Apple basically said, we're going to be doing this. The EU says, please don't do that. You're not allowed to do that. Fine, we'll take our toys and go home. What's the large business equivalent of being childish? Maybe it's just being childish. I don't know. Okay, great. Whatever that, if you say we cannot make this kind of cool feature without doing a bunch of illegal stuff, then maybe you shouldn't have that feature.
In the EU. We'll keep it here in the US.
Well, period.
Take all of our data.
I like a lot of what the GDPR is doing. So if I agree with that and the AI Act, maybe I don't want whatever Apple's offering because I know what underlies it. And that kind of gets the same AI art. We've been scraping the heck out of a lot of people's art without their permission. I think there's a bit more of regulation coming out regarding like the watermarking and being able to say, hey, please do not scrape this data, but with some actual like legal backing of it now.
Right. There's the Copied Act, I believe is what it's called. I think it's in the Senate right now, if I'm recalling correctly.
Right. So this is a US bill.
Yeah. Where the requirement that you basically watermark any media generated by AI, store it in the metadata that it was generated by AI, and then the law that you're not allowed to remove that metadata.
Right.
It reminds me of the little tag NFTs on like your mattresses.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Like, do not remove this.
Under penalty of law. Yes. And then you immediately cut it off as soon as you get home. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought more along the generated pictures of apes that were going around for like NFTs that people were very excited about for a hot minute. A scam, let's be honest.
Well, you're not talking about Bored Ape Yacht Club. Are you talking about something else?
Well, yeah, right. So the Bored Ape, yeah, it was a bunch of NFT images where like, this is the one of that, and you get the seal of approval that this is only yours. And then people, of course, saying like, great, I took a screenshot of it. Now I have it too. Your thing is worthless. The Copied Act would be, that is now an illegal thing. You can't take an AI image and remove the metadata watermark. It has to stay, no matter what.
So do you think this is a good idea?
I think it's best intentions. I don't know if it's going to work, given how things have worked with NFTs, where people just laugh, take a screenshot of it and say, now I've got it. And it's just some JPEG. It doesn't have any of the same watermark information. I think that we could get a lot of industry professionals behind this. I know SAG-AFTRA and the RIAA are both supporting the Copied Act. From like a conceptual perspective, if people were to do this and we were to be able to enforce it happening, I think that's a great idea. Add it into every version of Stable Diffusion that's sent out there, and now it just silently adds in that watermark. It doesn't change the appearance of the picture at all. You've still got your own whatever it is that you generated, but now everybody, if you were to share it with them, could look up this was made by AI. Okay, we've also talked about where does one thing start and one thing end. Photoshop has a generative AI tool that they're working on adding in. Other tools, you could take an existing picture and mark up a couple of things. Is a lot of what Photoshop already does AI? Yes. Where's the percentage? Is it like a 51% or more generated by AI has to have the stamp, but anything under doesn't?
I think it would have to be if it was involved at any part. But then we could also get the question of what is AI, right? Like, again,
right.
You mentioned Photoshop.
Everything got photoshopped. If
I
you
opened something
use
up in
Photoshop
Photoshop
at all, it's got a stamp. And then is that fair to say this is AI versus I opened up Stable Diffusion and it was 100% just generative AI from a prompt?
Photoshop, I use auto
really
color. Automatically fix my colors. I'm not adding a giant cat or something.
Right.
It just
one is the other.
And so then we get back to so that potentially every file needs to have this trail of all the applications, I guess at the highest level and at the lowest level edits that were made to it.
Yep.
I don't think that you can separate certain pieces of AI from that in a meaningful way. Well,
right. That's why I think this is a best intentions kind of bill, but how is it going to be enforced? Too broadly, too narrowly? The size of the needle that you have to thread is infinitesimal. I really don't think that this bill, granted, I haven't read the text of the bill, but whatever it is going to be extraordinarily tough to get right. I don't even know what right looks like. And lawmakers in general probably don't have as much insight into these sorts of things as like us or the very smart people listening to this podcast. So I really worry that look, my concern is a best intentions bill will end up having weird ramifications and not solve the problem.
Even I'd assume the intentions is that they don't want people believing media to be real that is fake. That's the concern. A citizen sees a photograph, assumes the photograph is real life, but in reality it was generated by AI. That's what they are theoretically protecting against. But then I would ask the question of, what if I have a photo shoot and I hire some actors and we put together, we shoot a photo of a giant, I'll stick with the cat. The giant cat is flying through space. We could take that photograph. It's not generated by AI. It was all practical effects on the day of. That would seem to be the same thing as the AI. It's easier with AI because I can just write giant cat flying through space into /imagine into Midjourney and there I get it. But we've had special effects for a very long time. We can generate these images without AI. So why?
So I don't think it's really about just the watermark on AI images. That same metadata watermark origin, just like, I looked at this coffee and I can see it came from this specific farm or whatever. Mm-hmm. The same kind of watermarking information can be on all other pictures with the intent of you're not allowed to remove these things. And if you are a real artist and you think that art got used by some sort of AI program, scraped and used to train a new version of Midjourney or Dolly or whatever, then you can sue. So this is giving real creators a little bit more legal oomph behind, I said you're not allowed to use this and you used it, now I can come after you. Which I think is one of the probably better directions that we should be going legally. Like we've talked about real creators and some people, especially very early on, saying this is going to destroy all of real art. It didn't, and it won't. But it does have ramifications against artists. Like Greg Rutkowski, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, does a lot of very fantasy styled art. And there was a lot of that in an earlier version of Midjourney. And he was understandably very upset because people were trying to use that sort of style to generate things. I'd be upset if people were trying to copy my style as well. I'm not a very good artist, but if I was, I would be upset if people used it. So, watermark all of these images. you're not allowed to use this. If you start seeing some stuff that looks really, really like your art style in something, you'd be able to sue. And then presumably the training data for these things would come up in legal discovery, and you'd find the watermarks and say, you did use my art in your thing. I assume that's roughly how that's supposed to go at that point. And nothing about that smacks as off to me, right? You used my stuff illegally. There's a law that says I'm allowed to say no takesies.
But that law doesn't exist yet, right? I mean, we don't yet know that it is illegal for me to build.
That's right. The Copied Act is
the Daniel Bishop
how we
AI
would make it.
art generator that exactly mimics your style. And let's just assume that, every piece it creates looks like it came from your mind.
I'd be sorry for anyone using that.
That is not illegal today. And I don't think that we're on there's no pending legislation that would make it legal. There are I guess there are lawsuits out there that are in progress that could potentially establish some case law
if
around
a Copied Act goes through.
And it's really just a question of copyright and how has copyright is AI a workaround for copyright? And maybe it is and maybe it isn't.
Well, I don't think I don't know. Again, I have not actually read the Copied Act, and it's only in the Senate. It is not a law yet. But I don't think it's actually anything about copyright per se. It almost seems to be like an entirely different thing.
Correct. It's only about labeling things that are generated by AI. That's all the Copied Act is about.
Well, no, not necessarily just by AI. It's also by artists.
Every artist has to embed metadata into any digital version of their art.
Yeah. So I'm going to read you something. We got this article from The Verge. Content owners, including broadcasters, artists, and newspapers, could sue companies they believe used their materials without permission or tampered with authentication markers. So those authentication markers would come from these sorts of watermarks.
Right, but I don't think there's a regulation that, let's just say you're a photographer, that you include this metadata in your photographs. What this does, though, is that it gives you an opportunity, hey, include this metadata in your photographs. Mm-hmm. And if you find a publication using your photograph, not as training data, but literally just they downloaded it and put it up on their website, if they have erased the metadata, that was a crime, and you can go after them from that. Now, you could already go after them for using your photograph without your permission. So I don't know, this is just about making that easier. Previously, there was more work to prove your ownership.
I guess, supposedly in the Copied Act, the NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, would be directed to create security measures to prevent tampering and requires AI tools for creative or journalistic content to let users attach information about their origin and prohibit that information from being removed. Under the bill, such content also could not be used to train AI models. So I think this would allow, it almost sounded like enforce, but I think it would allow people to say, here is my article I wrote, here is my art that I made, here's my song that I created, watermark, you are not allowed to use this for AI. Right now we have a robots.txt, which is supposed to stop websites from being scraped by automatic scrapers. Sounds like some of the AI companies are in some legal hot water for ignoring that.
Perplexity was the one that got the most.
Yeah. And granted, probably all of them are doing it. But giving a bit more legal teeth to, you aren't allowed to do this. You're not allowed to use that article. You're not allowed to use this art. You're not allowed to use this whatever. I think that gives a little bit more power to people to have some control over real things as opposed to AI. I suppose anything made by AI was made and therefore is a real thing, but you know what I mean, which is to say human sourced versus AI sourced.
Okay, so that part could potentially be significant, that if I'm able to label anything with this additional label, which explicitly, or which makes it a crime if you use it in your training data set.
Yeah.
I do think it's odd that copyright is something that exists without you explicitly documenting it or marketing it. In fact, like you have to be really explicit about giving it away, saying that, hey, anybody can use this content however they want. You you have all the rights by default. Even if you're an artist and you make a painting and you sell the painting, you still retain all of the rights to that image, to create reproductions of it, to make 100 more copies, to sell them. The person who bought the image doesn't get any, they don't get the copyright. You as the artist, you as the creator still own the copyright. And so I do find it a bit odd, I guess the opt-in part of this. Like, why don't they follow the copyright world where it's opt-out? You have to opt out of giving these, you have to either opt into giving these rights to third parties or opt out of maintaining the rights for yourself.
There's nothing wrong with a person imitating another person's artistic style. I have 2 paintings in my house. I don't remember what the original artist's name is, but there's a famous guy who does, I think he died somewhat recently, makes these gorgeous like oil paintings of, usually it's like people walking down a garden path, and it's like very vibrant, like kind of fall colors. It's a fairly distinct style. I got a print of one of those because the original would be a gajillion dollars. I also got, it's basically the same style that a guy was just pumping these things out, but it was original art by him. I watched him finishing the painting when I was in New Orleans. There's like a big church square where a bunch of artists sell stuff, and they're just ripping off famous artists' styles. But it was like $50 and I got an oil painting, an actual painting, and I put it up. And they're basically the same style. As I understand it, there's nothing illegal about him copying that person's style. I don't think, even through the Copyright Act, there's anything illegal about copying someone's style, but the Copyright Act would have you say, I'm famous artist so-and-so. All of my images now have that watermark on it. You can't train on that. That way, whenever you say, hey, Dolly, or Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or any of these, make me something in the style of so-and-so, if it uses any data from after this act goes into place, they'd be able to get sued for having used that as training data. Whoever used that to make a model or make a Laura or make a this or make a that, which is probably going to have issues since, I mean, like, it's the intersection of copying someone's style, which is allowed. A person can look at someone else's stuff and learn that style and emulate it, and that seems to be fine. But then you have copyright and this watermarking sort of equivalent, which is to say, you're literally not allowed to use this to train something. There's not a human equivalent. You're not allowed to say, I'm this artist and no one else is allowed to look at my art to make stuff like it.
The closest would probably be, I guess Mickey Mouse is now public domain, but you couldn't up until recent times create a Mickey Mouse t-shirt, even though you were not the original artist. Maybe I've been completely wrong. This is why we need a lawyer here. Maybe copyright does extend to stuff like this as opposed to just this one specific image. Because you're right, you're not allowed to go around making modern versions of Mickey. The House of Mouse will come down on you like a 10-ton gorilla. I think that's more of a trademark issue.
Turns out I don't know what the difference between copyright and a trademark is.
Well, you can register a trademark, which can be, most logos are registered trademarks, as probably the canonical example, which says that this symbol represents this brand and is usually it's associated with the category. So we are in the area of fitness clothing, and this is the symbol to represent this company. And so no one else can infringe upon.
You're not allowed to use the Nike swoosh if you're not Nike. You're not allowed to use Mickey Mouse if you're not, well, most versions of Mickey Mouse if you're not Disney. And so then could an artist just trademark basically their style if they have a specific style and say you're not allowed to? It sounds like it's usually a specific symbol or character is the problem, as opposed to an artistic style, which I think is one of the main things here. That's
said. I mean,
Midjourney, if you prompt it just right, I think it was Midjourney, got into trouble with, they must have looked at, all of the frames of a Batman movie and used that as training data because someone got something that looked really similar to a frame from, I think it was Batman. But it's not literally exactly the same. It's someone drew something from someone, in quotation marks, drew something, in quotation marks, from memory, in quotation marks, that happens to look very much like that other thing, but it's not exactly the same. It's this weird legal gray area.
I guess, yeah, maybe the interesting part is even take the AI out of it. The laws aren't super clear around this. And now we add the AI element into it, which brings this superhuman power of being able to look at a bunch of material and replicate the style very quickly. Quickly is a relative term, I guess, but we'll stick with that very quickly, which hasn't been possible before and is beyond what, there are a couple of humans in the square in New Orleans, which can replicate a few artists' style in a matter of 30 minutes. But now we can replicate every artist's style and every author's style and many other things, and more or less instantly. That is new. And I guess that has us questioning whether we should continue to let this be legal. Because historically it has been.
I'm not even 100% sure that guy in New Orleans is doing something legal. Maybe there are already trademarks for artistic styles. I literally don't know.
Not for the style.
I would assume not, but I'm not a lawyer. I do feel like it's rubbing a lot closer up on illegal, where there's like a burger truck that I saw once that was, I think they called it Sponge Burger, and it's clearly like the font from SpongeBob SquarePants. It's definitely the same font. It was hand lettered or whatever. But like, surely if I don't remember the name of it, and even if I did, I wouldn't rat them out because it was a good burger. But would the Cartoon Network folks, or Nickelodeon, excuse me, would Nickelodeon like come after a food truck for having some similar brand? Presumably they should, because infringing on that and then not protecting it means that they lose whatever other legal protections.
They're legally required to protect their trademarks. Right. If they don't, they lose them. An unfortunate little bit of the law that makes people doing. So they have to go after that one food truck in Austin, because if someone else can prove that they knew about it and they didn't go after it,
right.
and then now I'm opening a chain of sponge burgers.
Right. Well, that one was allowed. Surely more of them should be allowed. You knew
about it?
Yeah.
And you decided not to go after it. You weren't protecting your own trademark. So thereby you relinquished it back. And I took advantage and now have my chain of sponge burgers.
Right. So
which doesn't sound
that's
good,
more of the trademark of like a specific symbol, I think, at that point. Again, it's such like weird legal gray area type stuff where even if it feels like it should be right or should be wrong, we don't know if it's literally allowed or not. You and I, certainly I, because there's some legal precedent somewhere for that.
Well, maybe it will never really matter, because I guess there are some folks that are very skeptical, or becoming increasingly skeptical about the fiscal return on all this AI investment that's happening. Goldman Sachs, I guess, recently came out with a report suggesting that these returns on all these investments might not be what you think they would be. And I guess the biggest thing is that we have all these companies now building out these giant data centers full of GPUs, whereas historically they were full of CPUs.
Yeah.
And they're ridiculously expensive to build.
Not for the environment, to say the least. We aren't
seeing any... Oh, yeah. It's horrible for the environment.
Yeah.
We aren't seeing any significant new cost efficiencies that we would imagine would happen. These GPUs are just going up in price. And the hypothesis that we have enough companies to keep these giant data centers busy all the time, which will literally, be going into the billions of dollars to train models, is, I don't know, some people are skeptical about it.
We're in a bubble. We're in a bubble. We have to be in a bubble. Right?
Do we have to be in a bubble?
I don't see there's any world in which we're not currently in an AI bubble. Exactly as you were just describing, some of the big lenders, Goldman Sachs, saying, hey, so this is really expensive and there's operational hurdles and we're still seeing lots of hallucinations. No companies outside of the people providing the LLMs themselves seem to really be making too much traction.
Right.
We keep making fun of companies that, laid off 60 real writers and replaced it with an AI that isn't doing as good of a job. Like, the more articles like that there are, the more the people investing this are going to say, could we really be replacing people with this? Could we really be increasing our bottom line by using AI? And I think a lot of the people trying to use it right now are going to find out that generative AI, because that's what I really mean when I'm saying AI here, new AI, generative AI, isn't providing the returns that are being asked of. Is it because all these companies need just a few more $1 million and 2 more years of runway to really make it work? Or is it that we shouldn't be? It turns out that this is not necessarily a way of replacing all of these people to completely change X, Y, and Z use cases.
Yeah, or bring such novel new functionality that people are willing to really open their checkbooks. We've talked about it before that there's around a 2% adoption rate of all of this AI. People that are using it every single day today. It's about 2% of people. And as we previously discussed, that actually feels about right with the real current state of what it's capable of doing and who should be using it. Around 2% of the people should be adopting it daily. But we're from an investment thesis, we are acting like that number is 80%.
Right. Or at least will be.
Yeah. In the very near term, being in the next 2 years. Because, by the way, in 2 years, these giant data centers, their GPUs are going to be out of date. They're going to need to go back and spend the billions of dollars again in order to upgrade them and stay competitive.
Right.
So the concept that they're going to get a meaningful return on their investment, or the other part of this is the startups that are being funded that are spending millions, hundreds of millions, and then approaching billions into building models that only give them an edge in the market for it's months at this point before a competing company, whether private or public, and increasingly public open source model comes out with something that's just as good, if not better. And those millions of dollars are just basically flushed down the toilet that they spent on training their models.
It seems like a much more expensive and much worse for the environment version of progress in general of what humans have done. We've always been building on top of the shoulders of others. If there's some paper that the folks at Mistral release saying, and here's how we trained this model, every other AI company is going to go over that with a fine-toothed comb and try and pick out whatever specific learnings they can for building their model because they want to be at the top of the heap. But you're right, like if you're having to spend so much money to be at the top of the heap for such a short period of time, either it is your business to be constantly churning that heap and constantly clawing to make an ever better model, or you should use the models as part of your business. But like, I don't think you can be between the two. You have to be completely, this is definitely the thing that we do. We're going to be one of eventually 4 companies that keep churning out big new models because it gets even more expensive, even more expensive, even more expensive. Or you're the people that use the models.
Yeah.
Or you can train little ones that go on top of those models. LoRa's, low order ranking adapters, like those are easy for people to take an existing open source model and add a thing on top. Great. That's the middle ground, I guess.
There has been some shift, and at giant companies like Google, shifting away a little bit from the research side of things and shifting more towards the applied side of things. Specifically, their DeepMind team, which historically is a research team, now being focused more on building product features, which I would imagine is part of this.
Yeah, I feel very much the same. OpenAI started a lot researchier, didn't they? And now it's much more of a commercial product sort of focused company. There's gold in them thar hills. Google wants a piece of it. OpenAI's got a piece of it. Mistral's got a piece of it. Anthropic's got a piece of it.
We think there's gold in those there hills.
True. Because it's starting to warn that maybe there isn't nearly as much gold as was originally expected.
It's disappearing gold, like kind of like you have disappearing ink. It exists for like a very short period of time. You build your model. There's a real value in that. We can invest in it, but it's going to go away really quickly. And it's super expensive to build. And we don't yet have a super compelling hypothesis that the amount that consumers will pay for these features offsets the cost of both training the model and then running the model. Now, it's reasonable to suppose that those costs will continue to come down, but we don't have a near-term horizon for those for the cost of building, training, running these models to, come close to zero. It's getting worse.
I'm one of the absolute best people that you should be targeting AI products to. I'm so interested in this world. Yeah. And if you were to tell me here are 2 laptops, this one has the AI button on it and this one doesn't, and the AI button one costs $200 more and you have to have a $10 a month subscription, I'm not buying that. Of course I'm not buying that. I remember seeing something recently that, like, I think it was somewhere on the order of 80% of people don't want to buy something that costs more, especially if there's a subscription involved, for AI. If it's just there and part of it, I've spoken about this before, you've as well. I think this is going to get integrated into our daily lives, into every product we already use in a seamless way eventually, but we're still in that weird teething phase where, like, is the Rabbit R1? Is this something? Is this the future? Turns out, no, it wasn't. Still got it.
Still bricked.
Still bricked.
I emailed them again this week. No response.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure their customer support bot is overloaded.
Yeah.
But right, we're in this like weird teething phase. I have started to see on Microsoft and Google's offerings, especially, here is like Gemini added into. I'm loading up my phone because I'm pretty sure this is a real thing. I've got my text app open, just texts. And okay, it's not showing right now. I could have sworn earlier that I saw, oh, here we go. New chat, create group, and a brand new thing below that. And before I get into my contacts, Gemini, write, plan, learn, and more with Google AI. There's a button here in my texting app on my Android phone. I've never clicked it. I just did chat with Gemini in Google Messages. Okay, so they're looking for new usage paradigms. Instead of here's a chatbot app that you open up, it's now I can text an AI? That seems kind of weird, but all right.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. And this is going to get into more and more parts of our software. Oh, Google Docs or Microsoft Office now have their Copilot or their Gemini or whatever that you're able to help write things with. That, I think, is the future that we're going to go to, not in the direction of I built a bigger, better model. Of course, they're going to keep building the bigger, better models. But at a point, you need to build a product and you say, this one was good enough. For 1 year, you guys keep building something new over there. For 1 year, we're going to build a new version of the products that people are actually using based on this.
I don't know.
It can't just be new models forever. You have to build something with them.
Yeah, I'll accept that hypothesis that at some point we have to have products that people pay for. But I think we're at the same time suggesting that maybe the models aren't good enough yet in order to build these products that people will pay for, because people are 2% of the people are willing to pay for them at this point. That's how good they are from a cost benefit perspective. So they need to get a lot better for everyone to say, yes, I want to open my pocketbook. I'm fine with spending an extra $5 a month to have the AI button on my HP laptop.
I don't think that it has to be that we're going from that 2 to that 80% by better models. I think it's more of like we've got some very strong capabilities with the top models these days. I'm very much enjoying them. They help write code. They help write emails, this, that.
Make tacos.
They're making tacos. I think some of this is just an exposure issue, and that exposure is now coming through. It's integrated right into your Gmail, right into your texting application on your phone, right into whatever. I went to my bank and ended up chatting a little bit with a banker while I was there. Described ChatGPT, had never heard of it. Was very interested in it, had never heard of it. I don't think people are going to look out for specific an AI offering. It's going to be instead AI betters the thing that they've already got. Do I care if I open up the search window on my computer and I ask for a certain file using a full sentence and I get what I'm looking for if it was looking at keywords or if it was generative AI? No, I care that it found the thing I was looking for. People are already using and will continue to use AI without even realizing it's AI more and more.
But someone has to pay for it.
Someone has to pay for it. That's right.
Right now,
so it's either part of the Microsoft suite,
subsidizing.
it's part of your phone and you don't have to pay anything extra, or it's an AI girlfriend that you subscribe to for $5 a month, or it's an AI this
Right.
that you subscribe to or you buy.
But I don't think we've yet proven that it can just be part of the operating system from a cost perspective. Yeah. You know, it's just, we got a lot of companies trying it out and a lot of companies with very deep pockets, but they are not yet showing that there is an ROI on this investment. It's still a hypothesis, and a hypothesis that I believe that they must be counting on significant cost reductions in the future.
Cost reductions and income increases.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with VR. We're still in the early days of VR and AR and spatial computing. The folks over at Apple decided that they're not going to build a second Pro. It sounds like they're putting that plan on ice to do a more consumer-friendly version. Bring the costs down, make it more mass adoptable.
I've seen that story, by the way. I'm choosing to ignore it and believe that they are still working on the next version of the Pro. But it's one and the same in my mind. By the way, no one else is saying this. You are correct that it's not supposedly the Pro. But the big thing that, I guess we're off topic, but I do love the Apple Vision Pro, is that the next version, the compute will be transferred to your iPhone. So you will plug your iPhone into the headset. And by the way, you already plugged the headset into a brick that's larger than an iPhone. So you plug the headset into the iPhone, and now they've removed all of that compute so that it gets much lighter. It already didn't have the battery. They're going to remove some of the glass. There are suggestions that the quality of the displays would be decreased. I'm hoping, again, not actually the case. It's really just the evolution of it where it becomes more powerful, becomes kind of upgradable. As you get a new phone, your VR headset continues to get better.
That's not the Apple way. You're going to have to buy a new one of those every year or two, aren't you?
I buy a new iPhone every year. So like they're getting their yearly thing. Like the Apple thing would be it's more or less the same, but it has a different connector, and like that's the reason you have to change it. Oh, it's gone.
Speaking of regulations, I'm really in favor of the forcing them to actually friggin' use USB-C finally. Thank goodness.
I do like USB-C. It is superior to the Lightning connector, and I do like how it's rapidly getting to the state where I can just have one type of cable in my bag versus a whole bunch of different types.
In the US, when it comes to electrical products that you're plugging into the wall, sure, there's dryer plugs and so on, but basically everything is going to be 2 or 3 prongs, right? And it's got the one outlet that it goes into. I'm very glad we're finally moving in the direction of most consumer electronics just using the one connector. Unrelated to AI. This is like mostly an AI podcast, but thank goodness that we're finally all getting onto the USB-C train.
It's almost as if they've become self-aware.
We did it. That was a very good segue.
Well, you've been listening to episode 23 of They Might Be Self-Aware. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Maybe leave us a couple stars, just a few stars for the time we have spent together. We are available on every major podcasting platform, from YouTube to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on and on and on. But why not? Why not just keep listening and watching where you already are by hitting that button? There is zero cost to you and infinite gains to be had. We will be back next week with even more of this. I don't know what it is. It's whatever it is. We'll
Copyrighted, trademarked, a style.
Figure that
we
out.
don't know
we'll
what
figure
it
that
is.
out next week. At least until the AI replaces us, and then we get to go on vacation. So it's not all that bad. But let's see. Until next time.
They might be self-aware.